Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my latest patron requested movie review. So yes, my patron Jack Petrie has asked for me to review Sideways, a film I have seen a couple times before this viewing. And yeah, I've been meaning to check it out again for some time, to be honest. So it's adapted from a novel. It's written and directed. The script is written and directed by Alexander Payne, who gave us About Schmidt, among others. And it follows the story of these two friends, best friends, like since college, who apparently never seem to have grown up. Certainly when they're together, at any rate, or at least one of them kind of has tried to, whereas the other has stayed in his college kind of frat boy kind of mentality. Unfortunately, he's getting married, so he's played by Thomas Hayden Church, and his character is getting married like in a week's time. And then the main character, played by Paul Giamatti, he's the best friend. He's more intellectual, a lot more intellectual. He likes fine wine. He can talk you to death about wine. You know, he's a aspiring novelist. He's in the process of trying to get his novel published, and he's an English teacher. So he's obviously on a different playing field intellectually than his best friend, but he's going to take his best friend on a drive across the country, going to various wine tasting places, and just hopefully give him a good send off before he gets married. Unfortunately, this best friend, the Hayden Church character, is more interested as he puts it, in getting laid. So he before the shackles of marriage, as he sees it, he wants a last hurrah. And and then you got the main character, Paul Giamatti, who is a very sad sack. He's very bitter. He's 2 years out of a divorce. He's on antidepressants since the divorce, and he just can't seem to get his life back on track. As they begin their journey, they meet these two women, one of whom the Giamatti character kind of already has a bit of a history with. We can tell that he likes her, but he's a bit snobbish about maybe pursuing things with her because he sees her as a waitress. Maybe she's beneath him or whatever, until he finds out certain things. And then her friend, played by Sandra Oh, who the Hayden Church character decides, that's the one that I want to kind of pop my pre-marriage cherry with. So, yeah, the question is, where does it go from there? Well, basically, shenanigans galore. Now, if it was not for the performances in this film and the way it's directed by Payne, these two men would be scum of the earth. Some of the most unlikable characters you would ever wish to follow or not wish to follow, as the case may be. But as I say, it's the performances by Giamatti and Hayden Church that, no matter what avenues these guys go down, no matter what devious turns they take, no matter the fact that they lie to each other all the time, more so the Giamatti character, he lies to Church's character. Church is just basically cheating on his wife. He's quite open with regards to that when it comes to speaking with his friend. But yeah, suffice to say, they're not likeable guys on paper. But because of the way it's handled, the shenanigans they get into, it is both absolutely hilarious. I've got to say, there are moments in this where I laughed out loud, and I missed some dialogue that came after the stuff that had made me laugh because I was just in hysterics. I'd have done better pausing it and getting it out of my system. Yeah, some really funny moments. It makes you reluctantly warm to these guys, and I like to root for redemption with people, and I feel like I feel like with one of the characters we get that. I feel like with Giamatti's character we kind of get that. I think this is more a film about him being a midlife crisis. You know, he's lived a life. He's been married. He's done that, and it's fallen apart. He's at a point in his career where if he doesn't get taken on now, he probably never will. At least that's the way he sees it. So he's at the tipping point where if things don't happen now, then his life is essentially over. There's a really amusing quote, a very sad quote in many ways, but again, one of those hilarious moments when he says that he's so insignificant he couldn't even commit suicide. Obviously, the deeper meaning behind that being that a lot of famous artists, they got famous after they ended up killing themselves, but that's because they had a body of work behind them that was found and then appreciated. Whereas this guy, in his mind, he's so insignificant that that just. But when he came out with that, I laughed, and suicide isn't something that you should laugh at, but because of this character, because of his emotional state, his view of the world, the view of himself, and that portrayal by Giamatti, it just had me in hysterics. But that's what it's about. It is about this guy who's trying to find his way back to a place of meaning, a place of significance, not helped by the fact that all around him people are moving on. His ex-wife is now married, and that just brings him down even further into this spiral of depression. There's a really great moment, a scene, in fact, really beautiful scene, probably the best scene of the film. Again, wonderfully played, brilliantly written. Virginia Madsen's character and Paul Giamatti's character are having a chat. They've had a night out. They've all had a night out together. They go back to Sandra Rose, her character's house, and they go out back for a chat. And she asks him, why do you like wine so much? And he comes out with this really poignant answer about that shows some humanity in him, and that's one of the beautiful things about the film. Like, wine's boring to me. I don't know about you. I mean, I'm not even a drinker, so the thought of talking about wine to me bores me to. It would bore me to tears. If somebody was sat here talking to me about wine, I would just. That's it. I'm out. I'm gone. But what is so brilliant about this script is that it manages to take conversations about wine and a person's love of it and really relate it to greater things in life. So you've got Giamatti's character talking about why he loves a Pinot, or Pinot. Again, I'm not a wine expert. I think you pronounce it Pinot. But he talks about why it's his favourite and how it's because it's the hardest. It's the hardest grape to grow. It's the hardest one to kind of bring through the process. You've got to be with it every step of the way, and you can't just leave it like some grapes where they can grow in any condition. And it shows this humanity in him that up until this point we weren't quite aware was there, because everything that he does and everything he says, it kind of all revolves around him and where he's at in his life and why is life so against him, and it's just like you kind of, in many ways, even though it's funny, a lot of what he does and says is funny. If you met this guy in real life, you'd probably want to give him a slap and say, "Wake up, dude." But this moment just really humanizes him and shows us that actually he is that grape. He is the Pinot grape, or he sees himself as that. That actually, or not necessarily that he sees himself as that, but that he wants to be that. He wants to be in a relationship where he can look after someone like that, or someone can return that favor. It shows there's a desire for commitment there, which is completely lacking in the best friend that he has taken with him on this journey. Like the two of them are absolute polar opposites. You get this guy who's about to be married, and he's wasting it. And that's just half of that scene, and the other half is when he throws the question back at Virginia Madsen's character. Why did you get interested in wine? And everything she says, she's talking about wine, but what he's hearing is a complete description of himself. That's the subtext there, is that she's talking about how wine is a life. It has a life of its own. From its creation to even being in the bottle, it's still growing. It reaches a peak. There's a certain age that a bottle of wine gets to that is its peak, where that's when it's the time to open it, drink it, and it tastes its best. If you go past that peak point, then that's it. It's downhill from there. So she's describing this, and all she's talking about is wine, but he's hearing a complete description of how he feels and where he feels he's at in his life. And it's a beautifully written scene, and as I say, amazingly played as well. Now, Virginia Madsen I believe she won Best Supporting Actress for this, or was certainly nominated at any rate. But I think deservedly so. I think she's a great actress. I love her in Candyman. She's one of those actresses who, quite frankly, should have more really great roles under her belt. Casting agents should be pursuing her, to be honest, because she's so good. When she's given the chance to shine, she proves herself. So I think she's great here. But one of the things that really kind of made this scene in particular work for me is Giamatti's reaction and the cutting. The editing is brilliant. I think if you watch this scene, watch the moments at which they cut. I think it gives a really great example of how cutting too soon or cutting too late can destroy your scene. But there's a moment in that scene when she's talking to him, when she's giving her spiel about why she loves wine so much. There's a moment at which it cuts to him, and it got to me. It made me well up inside, and that's editing. That's knowing precisely when to cut to the reaction, so that as she's saying this stuff, you cut to him and boom, you know that inside he feels she's talking about him. You cut there too late, you lose that train of thought. You cut there too early, you don't quite get the emotional punch that you would as you do when you cut at the precise point that they do. So yeah, that's brilliant editing. If you want to see an example of great editing, look at that scene. It's fantastic. But as I say, these characters, certainly the Hayden Church character, he's a bit of an irredeemable mess, really. It's only by this. He's an idiot coasting through life. Both of these men are in many ways. It's just one is an intellectual idiot. But yeah, Hayden Church's character, like he does have this one moment where he breaks down, and you get the sense that he's about to realize what it is he's going to lose, but that's not quite enough for me to redeem him. For me to redeem him, well, you need to ask for forgiveness from the person you've wronged. I think it's okay well, the first step is recognizing the guilt, and I think that's what he does in that scene. He recognizes the guilt, and he breaks down, and he realizes, what he's done, what he's about to lose if he gets found out. But again, if he wasn't in a position where he was going to get found out, so there's this sequence where he sleeps with this woman, and the husband comes home, and he has to just get out of there. But then he realizes he's left the wallet. He's left his wallet there, and they've got to go back for it. And he knows that they've got his address. They've got everything. this woman he's going to marry on Saturday is going to find out, and it's like, well, if he hadn't have left the wallet, if he wasn't in this position now, would he be feeling this way? Would he recognize the guilt, or has it taken getting about to be found out to produce this response from him, this feeling of guilt? And that for me is why I find this character particularly to be quite irredeemable, especially given the fact that he, towards the end of the film, the marriage goes ahead, and we never get to find out, whether he tells her whatever. I'm assuming not. There's no evidence to suggest that he does. But to me, it's that makes him somewhat irredeemable. There's, and I think the marriage is doomed. For me personally, there's no way that marriage is lasting. The shame of what he's done is going to come back to bite him on the arse. That will always remain with him until he confesses, which he certainly doesn't do by the end of this film. So at the moment, he is, I wouldn't say he's irredeemable, but he's unredeemed by the time we get to the end of the film. And that for me it's quite sad, really, despite the fact that, as I say, throughout the film, some of the shenanigans he gets up to is absolutely hilarious. A lot of it is stuff I feel like I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I just can't help myself. And a lot of that is down to the charm of Hayden Church. He's just one of those guys that, he's got that surfer dude kind of quality about him. Where, you don't want to go to him for advice, but you're happy to spend a few hours with him and just shoot the breeze and have a good laugh. So this character played by Sandra Oh, that he hooks up with, Hayden Church's character hooks up with, he hurts her. The stuff that he's doing to her is quite abhorrent, and when she finds out, the reaction that she gives it's funny, it's cathartic, but it's really sad, it's tragic, because ultimately this is a human being, this is a person. She has a child, she's on her own, she's raising a child, she's a single mom, and this guy comes along who could, seems to be the real deal, who could help, she could share a life with, and it's just like, there's a lot of pain there, there's a lot of hurt. I think that kind of stuff, I think maybe gets lost a little bit in all the shenanigans, all the funny stuff, and I think there is another film there, is what I'm saying. There's another film to be made there about the pain that is caused to that character. I think seeing her give him a good going over at the end is one thing, but actually he's just wrecked her life, certainly for the foreseeable future. She might find a way back, but that pain is something she's going to carry with her. So again, it's that thing that makes him unredeemed by the time we get to the end. He's been punished, he recognizes his guilt, but he doesn't do anything about it. On the flip side of that, we do have, as I say, this Giamatti character who is going through this midlife crisis, trying to find out where to go from here, and he does a lot of abhorrent things too. At one point he steals from his own mother. He goes there under the pretense of giving her a birthday gift of flowers and seeing her, but really he's there to swindle her, to steal some money out of her drawer, and it's just like instantly that it's such an unlikable thing. It makes the character so unlikable, but as I say, that performance, the way it's handled, edited, everything, it kind of makes you root for this guy. And again, not in the sense that, and I've said this, but I said this very same thing in my review of Filth. This is a thing where when you have characters like this who aren't your traditional heroes in the films, or in fact maybe even anti-heroes, or just not any kind of heroes, as was the case with Filth. But here you've got this guy who you can see qualities in him that, like, if he could just recognize his own worth, his own value, that he could get out of this rut that he's in. You know, even when he's stealing from his mum, he has this moment. You know, he doesn't just take the money and go. He takes the money, he shuts the drawer, and then he has this moment where you can tell he's overwhelmed now with this sense of guilt, but he pushes it down and he moves on. And it's these little moments like that make you root for him in a hopeful sense, as in, I hope this guy finds his way back. And I think by the end of the film he does. I think he comes to a place, and that's through relationship. Again, you know, like if you look at most films, they're about relationships, they're about connection, about human beings needing each other. And I think through this Virginia Madsen character, he finds his way back to believing in himself or accepting himself. And I love the ending as well. Perfect ending. This is my kind of ending, you know, without spoiling anything, but the knock on the door, cut to black, boom. That's all we need. That's all we need. You know, I talked, recently I did my review of Killing of a Sacred Deer. One of my negatives for that was the ending. There's a particular point where I thought, boom, there's your ending, cut to black, you're done. And they didn't. They had to linger a bit more and have an extra scene that was completely unnecessary as far as I'm concerned. And I felt they could have done that here. Like, you know, knock on the door, we have a 2-minute scene, whatever. Are you going to let me in? This, that, and they didn't. Knock on the door, cut to black, out you go. Because regardless of whatever happens after that moment, it's unimportant. What's important is that this guy has found his way back. He's found a way to believe in himself enough to go knock on the door in the first place, and that's what's important. And I like that. It's great writing, it's great directing, brilliant editing. Yeah, cracking stuff. So Sideways, really great film. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. If wine is not your thing and you don't really want to hear people talking about wine, I get that, but I still highly recommend it, because this isn't a film about people wine tasting. That's just a backdrop. It's just it's a metaphor, you know. The things they do around the wine is really a metaphor for everything else that goes on in the film. And everything else that goes on in the film is hilarious, and just it's a good ride, despite some of the misbehaviors and misadventures that these two clowns get up to. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. So it's almost perfect. As I say, just a few of the little gripes I had, but yeah, truly great film. Sideways. Do let me and Jack Petrie know what you thought of the film if you have seen it. I'm sure Jack would like to know your thoughts as well. Thank you, Jack, for recommending this one. Like I say, had seen it already before, but been meaning to get around to watching it again. Glad I have. Had a really great time watching it. So yeah, post your comments down below. Let us know what you thought about it. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.